kitten was brought into the shelter and they said it was dying. I was told that since this kitten was dying, I shouldn't do anything. Just let it happen. There's nothing I could do. That didn't sit well with me, and that decision really changed things. This video is the story of how one little kitten changed the entire trajectory of my life. So I became involved with an animal shelter towards the end of the pandemic. I was still teaching English at the time. My classes were online. So during the week I would do my classes, and then on the weekend I would go to the animal shelter and take care of cats. It was a lot of fun. I would clean up after them, feed them, and provide enrichment. And providing enrichment basically means that you're playing with cats. That's my thing, right? So, I really loved it. I had so much fun doing that. But one thing to know is when you see an animal in the shelter and it has any kind of illness, it's really important to notify somebody right away. And that's because, for one thing, the animal itself can deteriorate pretty quickly, but also it can spread throughout the shelter because they're living in such close quarters. So I would do that. I would report any illnesses that I found. But what I kept finding happening was that I would report an animal's illness, and then I would go on about my week. I would go back the following week and the cat would still be sick, a little worse. I'd go back, I'd report it again, and then I would go back again, and the cat would still be sick. But at this point, now maybe other cats are sick, or maybe this cat's worse. But often, either I or somebody else would end up having to take the cat to the emergency hospital. And I should say that I live in a small area and we don't have a lot of veterinary hospitals, so they're often not open on the weekend, but we do have the emergency place. So it would happen a lot that I would have to take animals to the emergency hospital. And at that point, I started becoming interested in other ways I could help. What could I do to help these cats? I had a friend who was a former vet tech. She had changed careers and was a nurse, but she would come to the shelter and volunteer with dogs. And she started teaching me things, just small things. How to recognize if an animal is dehydrated, or some things you could do if a cat wasn't eating, things like that. And I started to become interested in that. And then that fateful moment happened. A little tiny itty bitty baby kitten was brought into the shelter. It was brought in by its foster. So what a foster is it's a person who volunteers for the animal shelter and they take the animals home. Usually it's kittens or an animal that doesn't get along well with others. There's usually some reason why this animal isn't in the shelter. But she brought in this little baby kitten and said it was dying and she didn't know what to do about it. And that's why she had brought it back to the shelter. And the vet tech that was on duty, she was the only vet tech for this shelter, but she was there and she came and told me about this kitten and told me there's nothing I could do about it, that she's gonna go home and I can check in on the kitten, but it's gonna die overnight and there's nothing I can do about it. Okay, so I do understand that kittens are fragile, and often if something is wrong with them, there really isn't much you can do to save them. But I didn't like the idea of just not trying, not doing anything. And there was another person there, a young girl, and she was in tears, and basically everybody wanted to try to do something to save this kitten, except the vet tech who had gone home. So I didn't know what to do. I called my friend that was the vet tech, and she came out and she saved this kitten. She came in and she warmed the kitten up. She gave it fluids and she fixed a slurry for it to eat. What that is, it's like a mix of watered down food just to give it some nutrients, to put something on its stomach. You know, and of course, none of us knew if the kitten would make it through the night, but at least we felt like we had done something. And, you know, we had helped her. We all, you know, we felt like we tried. At least at this point, if the kitten didn't make it overnight, we'd at least tried something. So the next day, kitten survived. The kitten had made it through the night. Now, it wasn't out of the woods, but it was a start. And just kind of to cut to the chase, the kitten ended up surviving. The kitten grew up, it was adopted, it's living its best life now. It has a home, it has a happy family that loves it. So that moment really affected me. Have you ever had something happen that just kind of opens up a crack inside you and maybe changes something, changes your outlook, changes the way you feel about something or how you feel in general? This was my moment for that. And at the time I was still teaching, so I hadn't really thought about changing careers yet. But I knew I wanted to learn more about animal care. And I started reading more, learning more. My friend that was the vet tech started teaching me things like how to give vaccines. And, you know, I still kept volunteering for, I actually, you know, I stayed there a little bit longer, but then I did end up switching shelters. And really that was the start of my change in careers. You know, I found something that was really life-altering to me. And that's my story of how I got interested in veterinary care. The story just begins there, really. But you know what? I want to know from you guys, did you have moments like that? Did you have something that happened that made you change anything? Change your outlook, change careers, change hobbies, anything? Leave it in the comments, because, you know, every toe bean has a tail. And I would love to hear your stories. And thank you for joining me on this journey where I'm going to continue to talk about my experiences and this crazy career change. I'm over 50 and, you know, it's a little late to get into being a vet tech, but you know what? I did it. I'm going to share it with you guys and, you know, share all things fun and animal related. So thank you for joining me on this journey, and I'll see you next time.